All right, welcome back to the Oberlin Executive Speaker Series, where we're bringing the Obies together to talk a little bit about how we're going to make the world a better place through sustainable, responsible business. Today's topic actually is our last external guest of this 12 guest series. And trust me, last is definitely not least with this A-lister that's joined today. So, the focus of my class, Business 118, big shout out to my class students that are here, and I know more that are coming. We are focused this week on building momentum and confidence. And what does that mean, right? The goal as Oberlin students is to be overachievers in college. It is my ambition is that you step out of the college with that same vigor in mind, focusing on your personal life and professional life and lack of balance thereof that will result. Also, you have to have a certain amount of confidence. Now, one person that I have invited today that has all of these things figured out, in my opinion, is a former pitch competition judge, venture capitalist, female entrepreneur, and overall, like a good human being. Sara Ledterman, welcome to the Oberlin Executive Speaker Series sponsored by Twist of Fate.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Or I guess it's afternoon for you now. I'm joining you for lunch and I'm having my morning coffee over here. So thanks for having me.
All good. Courtesy of the entrepreneurship department, gentleman here. This is Ted Evans. He's got everybody smacking their jaws with pizza. So no offense.
Awesome.
So
no, your mind works better when your belly's full. So go for it.
100%. Now, Sara, maybe we can start with a little self-introduction where you can tell the students in the room a little about yourself, kind of how you care a lot about not just making investments, but like to make the world better with a social impact or social consciousness in mind, which I know will resonate very much with a liberal arts school, right?
Yeah, so I'm a liberal arts school kid as well. I'm a Middlebury alum, so shout out to liberal arts.
Hey, you're getting some nods already on that.
Yeah. So I think one of the lenses that I've looked through, and I started doing a lot of volunteer work early, and seeing the deficits all over the globe. I'm an immigrant child. I'm a first-gen American, very proudly. And my dad was born in Mexico, my mom Turkey. They moved here later, college days. So I think I have a lens of having traveled a lot and seeing how most of the world lives and just how privileged we are, even at the poorest levels in this country. We're very privileged, but also we have a responsibility towards, upward mobility. And I think that's the American dream that this country is maybe losing sight of a little bit, and making sure that everyone has opportunity for that upward mobility, and giving back where you can, and opening doors where you can. It has just been something that was instilled in me, thankfully, by my parents. And one of the things that I always did was try and really open doors behind me, and then also really give back with all of the free time that I have. So I guess that's where that started. And I look at investing the same way. I look at how can we impact the most change for the most amount of people with technology.
This is great. Now, one thing that I want to start off with, as we talk throughout this series with many other entrepreneurs, that, entrepreneurship is not easy. You get gut punched on a daily basis. And you, as a female entrepreneur, I mean, you started things before. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that. Like, it's not just that you can empathize with that position. You understand what some of us entrepreneurs go through.
Yeah, I I think the best investors were entrepreneurs, and I know I'm biased. I will just inherently say that a lot of people would disagree with me. I think there's two paths to investment. And I think that having been an entrepreneur and worked in a startup and understand the chaos, understand team dynamics and growth and things is really important, especially for being an early stage investor. So, it's the do and then teach or do and then invest. I think there's a huge amount of value having gone through it. And you look at teams differently, you look at founders differently. I think it's really important to have had that experience if you're going to invest, especially early stage. If you're going to invest later, then go into a company and work in a startup that's in that, 100 to 1,000 phase. If you want to invest, later, but really having that experience gives you so much more dimension to looking at investments in a different way.
And then the flip on that, now that you're an investor, I'm sure that opened your eyes to different sort of circumstances as well, like being on now you're providing working capital for these businesses, right?
Yeah. I also understand the personal dynamics. Look, there's a lot of talk about, the upwards of, 3% starting startups, but the good majority of incredible startups came out of what are not Ivy League school founders and are not from really high net worth families. And so understanding what the personal dynamics those founders are going through too. And I've been there. I've been up panicked at 2 a.m, like not able to sleep, wondering if we're going to make payroll in our early days of our startups. And, I started in real
all
estate
about that.
acquisitions and development. And it's like, we have all of these, for lack of a better term, mortgages and commercial loans that are all due, and, dozens of subcontractors, I know what that intrinsic dread feels like. I know what it feels like to be rejected by a VC over and over and over again. So I think being a founder really builds a different level of resilience, but there's a lot of empathy for what they're going through.
Yeah, that's great. Now, to kind of open the OB community up as to how Sara and I met. Sara and I, probably 4 years now, have served at Sac State's Spark Ventures pitch competition. Now, for some of you uninitiated, the idea behind pitch competitions, you bring a bunch of entrepreneurs together and they'll present their pitch or like their mini business plan to a panel of experienced individuals. And then we will objectively score them and there'll be a winner. Now, but Sara's done tons of pitch competitions. We both have done the NBA pitch competition, Capitalize as well. I'm just curious, for you, Sara, when you do pitch competitions, I mean, there's the stakes of being in front of people and getting your business model out there, but then it's definitely a different dynamic than if you do a pitch to a VC, which is a more private, intimate environment, correct?
Yeah, I think you have to be able to do both. I'm actually emceeing the EarthX pitch contest on Thursday. But one of the things that I tell every founder is you need to have the 30-second pitch, you need to have the 3-minute pitch, and you need to have the 5-minute pitch. And the rest after that is all Q&A. So if you can, succinctly tell someone in 30 seconds that, elevator pitch, what you do, and then you can do an expanded version for sort of 3 minutes, that would be your pitch version. And then you have a longer sort of 5 to 7 minute one that you can do for investors. That's all the same story. You're just adding details. And there's a way that I love to do this. And I just tell everyone, since you're entrepreneurs, I'll tell you, I say long form, just write out everything you would want an investor or anyone to know about your business. Long form, it probably will be, several pages, if not a dozen pages of just every little point that you want. And then go paragraph by paragraph and highlight out the keywords and then distill that down into a key sentence and do that for all the points. And then there's going to be 5 or 6 points that are going to be the ones that you would hit in just the 30 seconds. And then there's going to be the details that go underneath that go into the longer pitches, and build from there. And I've always found that to be a really effective way to make sure that you're hitting the high notes and the low notes as you dive deeper into a pitch problem.
Yeah, this is great. And, I would love to ask you a little bit, for you represent 3Plus, or you represent a lot of different VC houses and efforts in investment. I know that you've done things with Fourth Wave and other programs. I'm curious, what are the types of companies that you personally get excited about, or that you personally like to invest in?
So our thesis for our direct investments is centralizing fragmented industries through platform. So we really focus heavily on B2B SaaS in a lot of ways, but anything platform-based. We don't really do consumer products, and we don't do hardware. The reason is to have the biggest impact. Like, it has to be something that's accessible across a lot of people. And when you look at fragmented industries, it's hard to get, individual users or consumers on board. So we figure out like how you can partner with the businesses on the business side to then get the most people on through them for effective change. And so that's how we look at direct investments. We look across a couple different primary sectors, sustainability, safety, and then resource security. So those are our 3 emphasis. And we focus on technologies that are being built for the bottom 50% of the population. So we're not looking at, a new email program or something like that. We're really looking to try and make impactful change across the largest group of people possible.
Fantastic. Now, I have to bring this up. So, this is my 5th year as an entrepreneur myself. And my company, we represent other startups, as you know. And we've had over 80 startups. And one thing that I've seen, the most powerful entrepreneurs can get pretty weak-kneed when they get around investors. Like they get nervous, freak out. But one thing that this series, what I've tried to do, you're the 3rd investor. There was an angel and there was another VC here, is to show that you're still human beings and you're a very social person. Like, for example, you guys will know one time Sara and I did a video call, and you were walking along Lake Folsom while doing the call. And I was just like, we call VCs masters of the universe, but I think people don't understand they're like human beings just like us. Now, I would love to ask you, but that's you. You're kind of different, in my opinion. But do you have a view on that? Like, is there stylistically, what should some of these students expect when they meet a venture capital person?
Look, I mean, respect everyone. I don't care if they're, the janitor or the president, everyone. I think one of the things that we've lost sight of is just being really respectful. But capital is a partnership, right? We're giving you cash to help your business grow. And that's essentially a partnership, because if you don't do well, we don't do well. So I think reframing it from like, I'm like asking this person for money, like I'm, below them on the totem pole, whatever. While those things might be true, there is a mutual respect happening, right? They're intrigued by your idea and what you want to build, and they're going to bring capital to that. That's a partnership. So I think reframing it as you're looking for a good partner, and not necessarily you're asking someone for something. I think it's a different mindset, and I think it's just a different dynamic. And I see it in founders. I see the founders who are really terrified. And I also think this is a socioeconomic thing, right? Mm-hmm. If you're talking to an MBA who went to Harvard, who you think is like the ideal person over here, there feels like sometimes there's a misalignment with power dynamics. And if you think about it, like, to even get on that phone call, you're probably 1 in 300 already. So you're already a winner. Yep. and they like what you have to offer, right? Otherwise they wouldn't be talking to you, because sometimes we review upwards of 1,000 decks a month sometimes. So if you're getting on the phone call, you're already special. And a no is closer to a yes. So, I think it's how you view it. And also I think for your mental health, like really reframing it is way better, because there is so much anxiety that builds up. And I know this personally from trying to sit there and convince someone that you feel like is way above you, or you're like, it's just a weird dynamic. And I love for people to reframe it. And I also say to investors too, it's like, at the end of the day, there's also a lot of us, right? So how are we going to be special to you? It's like dating, we're both trying to impress each other to some degree, right? So you're building a long-term relationship. So I always say, like, people first. I do those walk-in talks every morning. So it's two reasons. One is my mental health. I found that, like, I'll say this to any entrepreneur, like, you have to make time to be outside, and you have to make time to, like, move your body. Cause I mean, I'm like older now, but I look back and I think one of the things that really kept me focused and able to kind of keep being resilient through a lot of the challenges was having just, like, moving my body and being outside, and whatever that is. Maybe that's sitting still and doing yoga, but having that time to just, like, really, clear your head and be in a different environment is so important. So I take those walk and talks, and they're also casual, and it's a great way for me to either catch up with someone or meet someone new in a very, like, low stress way. And so it's like, hey, you're on a walk with me. So, it's just like friends chatting. And I do that with a lot of founders too. And I feel like that's a great way to kind of warm them up to, like, having a different mindset about the fundraising process.
So one thing that, I can disclose, a lot of my clients comment is when they start interacting with any type of investor, they're actually a lot of times very impressed with the body of knowledge and the breadth of knowledge that a lot of investors have. Because you'll run into an investor, first you look at their background and say, wow, they're like accounting, finance, some more of the, financial people. That I'm not entrepreneurs like you, but a lot of them have this certain finance background. But then when you start talking about your opportunity, many have commented like, wow, they seem to know so much. Now, I know deep down, like you said, you're reviewing 1,000 pitches a month. You're going to learn a lot. But if there's any hard skills or soft skills that you'd like to share that makes, from your view, a successful investor, that might be great for the students to hear about. Interesting. Reading.
I read like a ridiculous amount. I won't even tell you how much I read, but I read 5 different global newspapers every morning. And what I will tell you is that the more you talk to people and the more you read, the better patterns emerge, right? And it's not just reading US papers, it's reading international papers, and read papers from cultures that, like, you may not really have an assimilation with, or even regions that you don't care about, because patterns are global now. 110%. What's happening in the Middle East is impacting the economy as a whole. If you're not watching what's going on with BRICS, you need to. If you're not looking at that 3,000 foot level about sort of what the butterfly effect is about A, politics, B, economics, what is our economy? Who is our economy tied to? What industries are relevant for marking the dollar or economic mobility? Like, these are all things that really you can't look at locally. Like, everything is global now. And knowing where the trends are going to be, you have to, like, figure out what you sort of emerging globally, and then you have to really, like, dive deep on it. One of the things that I will say about investors is there's a lot of us that are just love research, right? We love learning, and we love learning from you. We love learning from everything that we're reading. And so if something becomes interesting to us, like we deep dive on it. We'll read everything that we can get our hands on. We'll talk to people who've been in the business for a long time or the industries and really try and get a grasp on it. And I think good investors do that. Whatever they're investing in, they really try and become subject matter experts in or pseudo experts in. And we all have varying opinions on them, right? We all don't want to attack the same problem the same way. That's why, you know, we can invest in 20 different startups. You know, if you gave 20 startups to 20 investors, they wouldn't all pick the same one. And that's because we all look at the problem differently.
Mhm.
So I just say, like, the more you can read, the more you can learn about things that you're interested in and even things that you're not interested in sometimes. I think it's really a good muscle to like learn how to flex. And when you want to build something, a lot of people are like, just, I have this idea, right? And they don't do the deep dive research. And I will drill down with people because I want to know that if you're building in a space that you have at least a really strong understanding of what you're doing and why you're doing it and who you're doing it for. And I care about that more mostly than the way that you're attempting to solve a problem at an early stage, because the way you want to solve it at day 1 is definitely not the way you're solving it at day 10, typically. So I want to know that you know enough about the market that you can make pivots when needed. And you also have like a good base knowledge that you're building from. And that doesn't have to be education. Like, if you want to build in a space, like there is no degree to get in real estate acquisitions and development. Like I did international economic development, right? And political science. Like, and I did a minor in petroleum geology. Like that doesn't really have to do with what I did. But I talked to everyone I could find in the industry and figured it out. And so we want to know that you're resilient and you have that like fire to do that and become kind of best in class at what you're doing.
Yeah, this is amazing. Now, I really, really want to talk more. Something that I think people underappreciate is the power dynamics of an investor. So when people think about investors, they're always thinking about the entrepreneur going to the investor to ask for money. But actually,
Yeah.
as an investor, you have to go and ask people for money, or you got no money to give, right? Like that. I think that's something that I explained this to one of my clients one time, and I said, trust me, that investor knows exactly what your experience is like because they have to go in front of people that have a whole lot more money and convince them to join their fund. Correct?
Yeah. So there are 2 caveats to this. If you were talking to a partner in the firm or a managing partner in the firm, they are also fundraising 24/7. Like it's just a fact. We're doing exactly what you're doing for bigger buckets of money because we get money from other people to allocate to you. We're basically for like investment advisors to some degree, right? We're just advising this pool of capital and consolidating it and investing it in startups. So
That means you face rejection as well, right? Like somebody will tell you no.
totally all the time. I get told no every day. Like I empathize with telling no. Now there is a difference. Like a lot of times understanding the layers of a firm is really important. If you have an associate or even a partner sometimes that you're talking to, they don't necessarily experience that. So that's a different person and there's maybe less empathy there. So I do want to say, like, sometimes you're like, why is this person like not getting it? It's because they've never done it. And they also have never fundraised. They've never fundraised and they've never been a founder. And those are really hard investors because and this is what where you have to be astute is that's the person that you're going to focus on the market size, the numbers, like all of that sort of subject matter expertise becomes really important when you're talking to those people because they're analysts, right? Their job is just to evaluate, and they actually have, you know, probably controversially, and they won't like me for saying this, but they don't have a good frame of reference, right? They're not majors in psychology. They've never done a startup. They don't understand like the team dynamics of an early stage startup and like what that should look like. They don't have a frame of reference for your market other than probably what they've read. So just knowing that you're selling very differently to that person than you are to a managing partner who maybe came from a startup in this space and is excited that you're building in this space. So know your audience too, right? And you have to be respectful to all, because I've seen some people be really disrespectful to associates. And my philosophy is like, you just have to do the best with the cards that you've been dealt. And so if that's the person that gets you to the next meeting, like, you still want to wow that person, right? Because they will say to the partner, like, this person wasn't nice to me, or they found out I was an associate and they were kind of like, you know, poo-pooed or whatever. Like, you might not, they might just go like, that person was a jerk, I'm out, right? And you won't even get that next meeting. So unfortunately, like, you're going to have to kiss a lot of frogs, but understand that behind the frog is the prince that you're looking for. So, you know, there's another one of my terrible dating references. There's a VC who teases me all the time because all I do is make dating references about startups, but.
No, I love it. I don't think that analogy is beyond this generation either, right? You know, about being the frog and the prince. Okay, so then question that I want to talk about is kind of meeting an investor. So you talked about sometimes you may call people, but actually where I get this, I've seen you operate is in these different receptions or like events.
Mhm.
And you know, I think the stigma for an investor in these events is like, you guys all get together and howl at the moon, but like, you're very, you know, humane, like you're normal people. So like, maybe you could talk a little bit about these events, because I want to break any stigmas that people may have.
So one of the things we do is we have a huge founder community, and we do these events all over the country to really try and amplify network locally. And the way that we, you know, the way that you do that is to get in rooms. And so I tell people, get in the most amount of rooms that you possibly can, where it makes sense. So sometimes, like, if you look at events, I don't know what there's not a lot of ROI on it, but make sure you're going into space intentionally and you kind of are going to talk to 5 people, right? Find 5 people. I think investors are happy to talk to you. Sometimes at events, they get overwhelmed because there's a lot of people trying to talk to them.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found most effective was to say, I can see there's a ton of people that want to talk to you. Can I just get your card and send you an email to follow up later? And that's an easy one. And then you send them a message before they're home, and that's impressive. That's always memorable to me. And then they remember who you are.
Sarah, you
so,
do
you know your
events even in Ohio too, right? Like you were traveling
we
out.
do them all over. I think the middle states produce amazing founders. The last founder that we invested in was out of Austin. And then, you know, another one in South Africa. So
where do you, I mean, where would these students find like events like this? Like, it's on your website, or like
every local ecosystem, you know, it's even interesting. So many economic development agencies at the county are trying to get involved in bringing investors together, whether it's angel investors or VCs. We're actually starting a new calendar that we'll have that kind of show the events around the country. That's one of our goals, is to pool these events. I mean, I'm sure San Francisco will be like this, and, you know, Ohio might be like that, but at least you can find the events that are located near you. And then really just looking, like, there's going to be venture funds in places like Columbus is a hub. There's a dozen venture funds there, right? So, you know, maybe you have to take a trip to Columbus, but you can take a trip to Columbus, and it's a couple hours, and make, you know, and meet some investors for the day, or go to a startup event. Or a better one, a good hack for all of you, is host one, and people come out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
So be a magnet for your community too, right? And that's the lead with service thing. And I know people think that's cheesy, but it's true. It's really true. Like, be the organizer if there isn't one.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm going to break the fourth wall and talk to the students directly on this. I want to encourage all of you. Don't wait till you have your business plan. Don't wait until you're an entrepreneur or founder to start networking with the venture capital community. In my opinion, it's always better when you're kind of a known entity. And I think, given that many of you have student status, I actually think most investors would think it's pretty charming that you actually, as part of your educational development, decided to attend an event and to learn and meet other founders and to learn about certain industries. And, you know, you can be transparent. Hey, I'm in a class like 118 and we just did a Kickstarter about XYZ event. We raised some money and we're thinking about, you know, how we capitalize in the future. I think it would be a disservice to your future to not start meeting people. And why wouldn't you want to meet somebody like Sara, right? Like she's friendly, right? So with that, Sara, I want to move.
I have a couple of suggestions there.
Oh yeah, great. Yeah.
About taking advantage of your student status. Use it to actually network with the people in the industries that you want to be in. So if you think you want to do a startup in, you know,
energy,
fintech, energy, whatever it is, go find senior people that are in those fields, whether it's on LinkedIn or wherever, that are maybe local to you or regional to you, because they like or went to your university. And this is where you leverage your university. Alum love to help their next generation. They are passionate about it and they will take a call from anyone typically. And so what you do is look through LinkedIn, filter by the college, and then find people that are in the space that you want to be in and send them a message and say, hey, I'm connecting with you because I'm a student. I'm learning about this. I want to be in this space. Like, can you make a half an hour for me? And whether it's on Zoom or in person, start to do that across the industry. And so there's two reasons this is important. I only accept people in my LinkedIn network that I've met in real life. And there's a reason for that. I don't have like the biggest network. I don't have 60,000 people in my network and I kick a lot of people out. I'm pretty ruthless. But what I want is that when you look at my LinkedIn and you see my connections, you're like, this is their network, right? And your network says a lot. So if you start connecting with these people and these are in your network, and those, when we diligence you, we can go to those people and they can say, yeah, I had a conversation with them. They're such a go-getter, or they're really doing something interesting in this space. That goes a long way for you. The other thing is, if you need advisors, you're basically pre-building an advisory board and you're vetting them in a context that's not like, you know, I need you today. It's like, hey, I'm building this relationship with you. Oh, and by the way, 6 months down the road or a year down the road or 2 years down the road, you know what? We decided that we're actually going to build this thing. And you were so helpful. Will you join my advisory board? Like that's a hard sell in my opinion. And it already has a lot of knowledge about you. So I would say leverage early and often. One of the other things is don't just talk to people once. Like make sure that you are keeping in touch with people. I think that's one of the lessons that I learned maybe later than I would have wanted to, because a lot of the people in my early career, you know, you just lose touch with. And so I have a system. I follow up with 3 people every day. 2 are quick notes and 1 is a conversation. And it doesn't have to be long, 5-10 minutes, but I make sure that I catch 3 people every day that are in my network just to make sure that I'm checking in with them, that I'm staying, you know, top of mind. So those are my suggestions.
Fantastic. Please make a note on this. This is golden stuff. Okay, so I have to, you know, I wouldn't be Doug if I'm not provocative. I have to ask some, you know, go on the devil's advocate side of it. I mean, you're a female entrepreneur, female investor, great human being, but I mean, I have to acknowledge that the VC community has not been great to women. Just statistically, the amount of money that goes into it. I mean, you have, but I'm saying as a whole, post-COVID, some of the numbers, look, women make better leaders. I mean, okay, so I'm okay revealing my inner she. Women make better financial decisions than men on average. Women make better leaders than men in terms of letting people cooperate and voice their views. I mean, there's studies on this. Like I'm not disputing that, but nonetheless, the community is not enabled and empowered women.
It's not, and it's not a charitable cause. That's what I try and keep reminding people. It's like women on teams are 65% more capital efficient. They generate cash flow positive returns at a quicker rate than their all male counterparts. But also, if you're ignoring 51% of the population, are you building a product that people are going to buy?
Yeah.
And that's the bigger thing. Because I don't think you can do that effectively. And when you look at the returns, women are 2% of capital and they're generating almost 17% of unicorns right now. So
Why
like,
does this
you're
happen,
also
Sarah?
picking.
Why does this happen? Like I still, it blows my mind that in our modern era, and the data supports it, as you state. Why do you think this is happening?
It's there's a lot of socioeconomic reasons. And I think it's the same thing kind of across all minorities. And you see, minority women and minority men, impacted at greater rates. And I think it's just, again, network. Like it really becomes a network game. And this is why we're so passionate about doing events everywhere, is to kind of open network. But, they know how to get into things. Like they've learned these, skills that allow them, whether they actually are good or qualified or whatever, they know how to sort of work the system, for lack of a better term, and I think that that's one of the reasons. The other reason is I think there's still just a standard sort of norm in finance is that men are, quote, better at it. And they just assume that if there's two teams and one's all guys, they're going to do better. And I don't think the move fast and break things that everyone was talking about of, 5 years ago, I think that's cyclical with the economy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at the result, right? And we have a lot of fool's gold companies and people being indicted, like in crypto, because of that type of attitude: move fast and break things.
Yeah, and I think there's ways that you should do that in startups, but there's also ways that you shouldn't do that, like being sloppy with regulation and being sloppy with, cash flow. I mean, you're stewards of someone else's money if you take VC money. And it's not even our money, it's someone else's money that we're responsible for. So if we're entrusting you to be good stewards of that. So that's one of the things we talk about is financial stewardship, right?
Mm-hmm. Is there any,
which is
any message of encouragement or a love letter to the female potential entrepreneurs in the room? Because they should get some special treatment. I get pretty passionate about this. Like, is there any thoughts or any suggestions for them?
Yeah, my just learn and connect with as many people as you can. Again, if you don't have a women's entrepreneurship group on campus, make one. Get the alum that are really successful to come and talk to you, because women should be, but mostly want to open doors behind them. And if not, find incredible local business leaders or just even someone who's maybe comes through the area because they work for a company that has an office in the area, and ask them to come and talk to you. People love to do that stuff. I mean, women love to really champion other women. So if you don't have that organization, build it. And also don't forget to invite men. So if there's some really strategic, like large company folks that are in the area, ask those people to come and talk to you, because it does two things. First of all, it gets you in front of them, and they're people with capital, but it also shows them what incredible women there are building companies and thinking about entrepreneurship, and it changes their mindset as well. So I think it's a two-way education.
Fantastic. Sarah, last week, one of our themes of my class was fundraise every day of your life. And we started talking about financial literacy, the credit bureaus. I already told them to throw those credit cards with the high interest bearing in the trash that they, that are already pirating them as students. I was curious, in that discussion, we did talk about some of the non-traditional forms of fundraising that have arisen, like crowdfunding, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, GoFundMe. I'm curious, as an investor, I've spoken to them, especially the females in my class, that taking a non-traditional approach of fundraising helps you have stake in the game when you get in front of the investors to say, if this community is willing to invest in me, why aren't you? I'm just curious for you, have you seen some of your companies do crowdfunding or some non-traditional forms of investment to kind of help their creeds and make their arguments?
Yeah. So one of the most successful ones that we invested in that actually did this was Breshna. Miriam Nusrat is the founder, and I will happily connect anyone who wants to talk to her, but she might be a great leader to talk to the class at some point. She's incredible. She started with a Reg CF and did a crowdsource fundraise. And I actually, kicked in, I think, $500 in the early days in that. And then, grown with her. But her last round was like, I think, close to 40 million. She has Paris Hilton as an investor. So there are avenues to like really move through some of those. I think that they have to be done in a certain way. The other person I know is someone who has a platform for Brandon Brooks built a few platforms for that. And then the other person is Darren Marble from Issuance, who's done an incredible job. He has the TV show he does called Going Public alongside that. So there are definitely a lot of alternative ways to fundraise. But before you even do that, this is my opportunity to talk to you all about non-dilutive capital. I have a gov background. So if any of you have a gov or military background, or you're making something that might be useful for the government, SIBR grants, SIBR grants are incredible. Also, the SBA has tons of non-dilutive funding. There are grants for everything from everywhere, including your local economic development councils. There's a lot of free money. And I say, tap that first, like really look at what you're doing. The other thing that allows you to do is to figure out like who your true customer is, or could you have a different customer set than you actually think you do? Dual use technology is a focus of ours. I love it. And dual use means that you sell to the private sector and you sell to the government, to the public sector. So I think those are interesting places to start. Is start with free money.
Yeah, I mean, we did talk about how much of the grant money from the government's given back, and we definitely covered like National Science Foundation. I will tell you, the big thing though I pushed for is just financial literacy. Like, take it seriously, guys. Like,
Yeah.
I even commented like, yeah, I think some of my 118ers remember I was saying, look, you ought to thank Prof. Doug because I'm about to save your marriage before you even got into it by choosing a spouse that has good financial literacy, or at least you can teach them and they'll learn. But without that, a lot of divorces can start from money. And
I'm going to tell you another, not to scare you, but make sure that if you're starting a company, that you do the proper housekeeping on your equity, especially if you plan on getting married, especially if you are married. You can lose half your company in a divorce, and you will lose half your equity in a divorce in 90% of the states. So I actually went through that with, I'm full transparency, and I'll just, I think it's important to have this sort of background because founders don't think about it. I didn't think about it. You never think your marriage is going to end, but you learn a lot when it does. But you will have to shell out your equity. And maybe, depending on how you built the company, maybe your partner was the one who financially supported you through that entire process, right? And so they do deserve something. Like, be equitable, but also understand that like that has to be mapped out on paper, because it affects your employees, it affects your investors, it affects the long-term health of the company. So make sure that you are really thinking about those things if you're going to be an entrepreneur. And then if you are getting married and you've already started a company, do a prenup, because it's the best piece of paper that you will hopefully never need. And actually, if you do it, you're less likely to need it. So that's like a big one, is make sure that you're talking about that stuff with that person, because that's a whole nother area that should be literate on.
I
But financial literacy is really important.
No, it's resonating with people, because I know in my class people were laughing when I kept bringing up like about the romantic nature of like, you meet somebody, it's like, hey, like, what's your credit score? Like, do you even know what that is, right? But I think it can save headaches, and I'm really glad you brought this up. I hope all of you understand that. For example, if you're a majority owner in your startup and you get a divorce, you're not going to be the majority owner anymore. And that could have catastrophic results on decision making. Like, that company now will go through bipolar management and other problems, and it may not even survive. So I really appreciate you sharing from a personal standpoint, Sarah, on that one. But I agree with you. I'll tell you, my father was, I don't know if you know this, my father was a financial planner. So of the youngers, if you ever met me and him, I'm like, I'm legacy understanding of financial literacy, but I am definitely the risk taker. Like, between the two of us, he was definitely risk averse and I was the risk taker. You know, I'm curious for you, like, as you see a lot of these founders, do you meet a lot of founders that have good personal financial literacy and understanding, or they're kind of picking it up and learning?
No, a lot of them are picking it up and learning. I get a ton of, even cold outreach. It's so funny because I talk a little bit about financial literacy especially for kids and families and upward mobility. And I don't know if you know this, but over 70% of women have less than $300 in savings in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you literally couldn't buy a week's worth of groceries in most of America now on that. And you certainly couldn't pay, if you got sick. And 53% of your income goes to childcare. That is like unsustainable for 90% of this country. We're headed for major problems. So understanding and balancing a budget and all of those things, especially if you're going to be a founder, is so important. I get cold DMs. And I read one to a class, obviously not the name of the person, but from a founder that had just closed a round of capital, and they're like, do I pay myself? Do I buy a car? Do I get, do I rent a place? Can I put them, do I buy a house? Like, what do I do? And I'm like, that's a little bit scary, right? Because they've put all their, time and energy into this business that now they have funding for, and they like don't know how to even decide what the priorities are personally. And, I say like nothing I say is legal or financial advice. But there's two caveats to this. Get an investment advisor. Find an investment advisor. But the bigger issue with finding an investment advisor is don't find an investment advisor that looks like what you think an investment advisor should look like. Find an investment advisor that understands your socioeconomic background, because they will help you make decisions in the right way. And eventually they will help you invest in things that are important to you. Because if they don't understand what's important to you, what they will end up doing is investing your money in what's important to them. And those are people that look like them. So I see this a lot with angel investors and a lot with people who are first generation wealth accumulators. Like, they hire like some stodgy, like, I won't illustrate. And then they're like surprised when that person says, don't invest in women. And they're like, I'm a woman founder and I had a successful exit. Why am I not investing in women? And they're like, go invest over here in A16Z. Well, like those are the people that turned you away. Why are you going to give them your money now? Like, and first of all, their returns don't even matter. So like, really find someone who can give you good advice, who understands your journey. And that's really important. But also understand the basic finances. I have a thread I will share with you about how I help my kids sort of understand finances and hopefully grow up with good financial literacy. Although I have a teenage daughter right now. And so I feel like, sometimes that maybe isn't sticking, but,
you may have missed your
there's
opportunity
like,
there. You may have missed your opportunity.
No, she's great, but I joke because they like want to like do everything. But understanding basic budgeting and just literally write down everything you spend all the time and like see it on paper. And then like highlight the things that are important and budget out things. Like learning how to save for a goal is a really tough discipline. One of the things that always surprised me, and I didn't think about it, but I make a ton of coffee at home. And we got in this like phase for a little while, like when, going out for coffee is super trendy and it could be a treat. Like put it in the
Be
treat
pricey
bucket.
too.
But I think Suze Orman said, no, was it Suze Orman was said, I never bought a cup of coffee out in my life, because if you forewent buying coffee and, making it at home and taking it with you, that by the time, if you started doing that at 25, by the time you were 65, you put $100 a month away, instead, you would have $1 million. So like every time you look at a Starbucks or something, just in your head, think that that's $1 million that you're like tossing away. And I think that when you start to look at the impact of little micro changes like that, like you see the butterfly effect in your financial security. People are always like, oh, I'm going to drive a new car every 5 years. And like, why? Like the attrition of getting a new car, even if it's a used car, is high. So if the car is like working and it's getting you where you need to go and it's fine, then like, why do that? And people are like, everyone wants an electric car. Electric cars aren't, it's controversial, aren't better for the planet. Like they're not right now. And they use the lithium, and it's all farmed from the rainforest and child labor in the Congo and things like that. So if you want to talk about it, in terms of the socioeconomic impact, it's really problematic. But bigger than that is that you're still spending a lot on electricity. And if you don't do the math, like you're paying a premium for a car and then also paying a premium for electricity. And if you don't have good financial literacy, like you won't even, like people just assume it's better and it's cheaper. And so like really understanding like the decisions you're making and some of the stuff behind it. Now, people may want an electric car. Great. You may want a hybrid. Like, I'm not saying don't buy an electric car, but like do the math, right? And understand how long it takes to like make that gain back.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And, just so it wouldn't be me if I didn't interactive poll you guys. So if I really hope all of you understand how important this stuff is, particularly financial literacy. How many of you know your FICO or credit score? I don't want to know the number, but do you know what your credit score is right now? Okay. That's 3 of 10.
It's free in your banking app.
And let me tell you, here's even better, right? If 3 out of 10 of you actually know your credit score, imagine your boyfriends and girlfriends. Look at that statistic. So this is where you want to build good habits early on. If you want to be an entrepreneur or an investor or these things, start with good habits now. Because if you do it now, by the time you get money, as Sarah mentioned before, you know what to do with it, if that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. And don't be like our Congress people. Like I don't know how many ridiculous amount of them are like have an under 600 credit score and have filed bankruptcy at some point.
They're living on debt.
I mean, our ex-president had filed bankruptcy at one point. So like, but really just like those things, and also figure out how to get all those things for free. Like learn how to not pay for stuff. That's a great skill that you learn from rich people. Like learn how to not pay for stuff. Your credit score is free from your bank at least once a year, right? There's all of these discounts you can get for being a student places. Like there's so many discounts. Like there's all these things that you can get. PitchBook is insanely expensive, but there's a deal through your college. Like if you want to start researching startups and all this stuff, like I think it's free for students through the college. Like figure out how to get stuff for free. Like, because then you start to like really weigh out when you can figure out how to get something for free. It's just a mindset. You can figure out how to get money for your startup for free. Like, you're going to be a lot more discerning when you have to give up equity for that. Like, you have to weigh out like how you're going to use that money, right? Because all of a sudden that costs you a lot. So it's a different mindset. You're going to be a better steward of the funds that kind of come in, right? It's not free money anymore. It's like, this costs me equity. Like, how far can I stretch this? It's just a mindset of that I learned, and I learned that just through observation. Like, I mean, I still am the worst. Like, I will wait till something goes on sale to get it. Like, and delayed gratification. That's the other one. That's a big one. Like, today it's like everything with Amazon is like, I want it the same day. Like, learning to wait for things is so important. I think it's just a skill everyone is like really struggling with these days, is patience.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Now, I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and I want to give you guys opportunities to ask questions. Is there any questions out there? Yeah, I have more. I mean, me and Sarah will hang out, but any, come on, about your credit scores, FICOs, entrepreneurism. This is an A-list investor here. Yeah.
Can we get a little background on, you said you started your own company, you were originally an entrepreneur before you went to venture capital. Can we get kind of background on your path in like the initial stage and like?
Yeah.
You
So
heard the
very different. I started in international economic development, and then I went into oil and gas. So I worked for an oil company, and then I ended up starting a company with a friend of mine in real estate acquisitions and development. It's kind of a funny story. He was like, look, we should buy all these properties, and we can, the way mortgages were working back then, which they don't work now, because that's kind of what happened with financial crisis at some point, was we were able to buy a lot of properties and nothing was digitized. And so you could kind of skate through getting a lot more properties than you qualified for. So we took our money, which was very little. We pooled together like 15 grand each, like our entire life savings at that point. And we started rolling property. And we, you know,
were you flipping them or renting them, or like, what was
the? We were flipping them, and I would do it differently now. See, we didn't even know what we were doing. But I would have kept them all and turned them into rentals. Because I think affordable housing is going away. And I mean, but we were flipping them. And then we were also buying land and then selling it back to builders as things kind of escalated. But what I learned was, like, you either have, like, we had no idea of like the risk of what we were doing. None. I mean, or we did, but it was really irrelevant because we were young and we're like, whatever, if we lose it, we lose it. So I say the best entrepreneurs have everything or nothing to lose. And we had like everything to lose, but at the same time, like, didn't understand. So we started that. And then the reason that I even got into tech is we realized there were no tools to help us do and manage what we were doing. And so it was really interesting to me. My whole family was engineers. So my brother, my dad, my uncle, everyone was an engineer. And so I started like saying, like, how do we fix this problem? And that's where I got into tech, like realizing we could fix big problems with technology rather than having like a 20-foot whiteboard in our office and like calling, people to check. So I think solve like problems that are your problems. I think I invest the same way. Airfare was so expensive, and then Southwest came out, and I was like, this company is going to do really well. And so I bought their stock. Like that's I invest with the same thing as like, find a problem that's so big, like it's impacting people every day, and then figure out how to solve that. But that's how I got into tech. And then I did another startup after that, and we raised venture capital. And that's when I realized like how problematic venture capital is, but it was also a huge learning curve on that, having been a successful entrepreneur and then still having people like question your ability. It was just and raising money and getting commercial loans and stuff from the bank is very different than raising venture capital. So that was a whole new learning curve. And even then, in helping women and angel investing, like nobody ever told me I could be a VC. Like it dawned on me after people kept saying like, you should do this. I was like, oh yeah, this could be really interesting. And I've been on both sides of the table. So, I have a non-traditional path. I mean, and I say there's a lot of non-traditional paths to venture. And I want more colleges that are not, traditional, like the top 5 business schools that feed into private equity, to know that this is there's a path to this, and you could be really successful at it. And having a different lens is an advantage.
I agree. Great question. Any other questions? Okay, we're 5 minutes over. We have to be respectful to our A-list investor here too. So thank you for coming. Again, this is our last external guest of the Oberlin Executive Speaker Series. The series will continue for the last time next week, where yours truly is going to be interviewed. I will be the guest next week and talk about my journey to entrepreneurism, to freedom from the jobs, and why I dedicate my time to teach, to break the cycle for many of you. So I really appreciate you. I hope this is great for the Oberlin community. We're trying to make the world better, right? 1 week at a time. Sara, my friend, you are phenomenal, and it's always a pleasure. I want you all to know there is an upcoming Sara Ledterman Twist of Fate episode. A lot of you don't know that our podcast, we're about to relaunch in a big way. We're doing an all access behind the scenes series as well. So you're going to see some big, crazy stuff going on, where we filmed on location at my house, Salesforce Tower, the largest structure in San Francisco. We're doing New York, and we're doing other things. So you will see Sara again. So Sara, if any of them want to get in touch with you and, maybe ask a few questions.
Yeah. Feel free to share my email.
Okay, no problem. I can introduce any of you to Sara if you want. Okay.
Yeah. Anytime.
And I hope this, it lightens up your day, and I really appreciate you always giving back, and you're making a difference. I know as an entrepreneur you don't get patted on the back hardly at all, but as an investor I think it's even less. So kudos to you.
Well, I appreciate it, and good luck to everyone. Congratulations. And if anyone's graduating, best of luck to you. So.
Well, I'll see you again, Sara, at Sac State. I'm going to be doing some cool stuff there this fall, so I'll be seeing you, okay?
Awesome. Okay, take care, everyone. Have a great week.
Okay, bye-bye.